Season 2, Episode 2. My name's Tobe Johnson, and you're listening to Strange Brow Radio. If you found us on a podcatcher of your choice, thank you very much. You can also find us on YouTube, and you may want to do that, especially for this 2-part episode, because we are speaking to, in person, from their active property, a guy by the name of Forrest Walker. And Forrest and I go down some interesting roads. In fact, we actually go down some of his roads. I'll tell you more in a second, but thank you again to our sponsor, Feral by Aaron. You can get a load of the Alchemy sound devices. Let her know that you heard about them here, and maybe there'll be a special prize in your box at Feral by Aaron, only at Etsy. All right, we'll be right back. All right, so spring is around the corner, hence episode 2, season 2, which was always meant for springtime in the Rockies. So we're right on time, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule, but that's why this is a 2-parter. And so you can hold out for part 2, and I'll tell you more, like I said, about our guest here in a second. But I wanted to say, since we last talked, you had a chance to vote on the poll. It's a little convoluted on how to vote. I'm still trying to streamline and figure out why Facebook won't give us the poll button, which everybody else seems to have available to vote on a poll. So you have to go to a link and vote. And this was your chance to do it. You did it by Valentine's Day, and you're sending me off for, if not an overnight, close to an overnight at the Slag Forest over at Maury Island, home of the precursor to Roswell as far as UFO crashes, or at least a UFO in trouble. Donut-shaped UFOs in trouble, dropping molten metal down into the Maury Island forest. So we're going to go check that out. And I'm headed over there with my certain items that you said I'm allowed to bring, including the dowsing rods and the camera, of course, and the copper rods. And then I'm also heading in with the Psionics Color Night Vision camera, which will give the patrons over at patreon.com/strangebowradio the extended night vision looky-loo at what's happening in the sky over Maury Island. So I will definitely be showing a little bit of the footage, of course, to everybody, because it was a crowd-funded camera that people helped buy, but mainly over at patreon.com is where the money came to buy that camera. So they'll be getting the extra footage, but you'll definitely get some as well if you just want to watch it on regular old YouTube. Again, the algorithms over at YouTube are a little funky and murky. If you go over there and watch a video, just write a comment. It doesn't have to be long. Just say, chill vid, or, camera angles below, whatever you feel like you want to say about the videos that are up there. The comments are, the interaction part of the algorithm, and they like that. And so that just moves us up and up. So that's how you do that. That is coming up here, I would say in probably the next couple weeks, we'll put that out. Also, we are planning a road trip to the ET Highway near Pahrump and Vegas and Rachel. The little alien, of course, will be on the destination here. Never done it before. I feel, called to the desert now and again. And looking forward to going out there and boondock underneath the shadow of Groom Lake and, Tikaboo Ridge, I believe, is where Jim Lear and Bob Lazar headed out. And I think maybe even Bigelow might have been with Bob during one of those early trips in the late 80s, early 90s. He was relating a story. If you haven't seen the new Joe Rogan interview on Spotify, you can watch the full video. Just download the Spotify app and you'll find our podcast as well as Joe's. And he sits down for, I think, over 3 hours with Bigelow and goes into some of the deep rooted history about, you get a lot of Joe's perspective. And now that he can't smoke out because he's in Texas, I think the alcohol gets him, yapping along. But I think eventually he's going to talk about Bigelow's experiences with UFOs at Skinwalker Ranch, and I haven't got to that part yet, but do check that out. And yeah, where was I? Oh, Alien Road Trip. So we'll be doing that end of May, and of course that'll all be available for you as a YouTube video or podcast or both. So I look forward to that. First time for me. Okay, today, part 1 of my in-person conversation on the property of an extended experiencer, and I'm just peeling back the layers here along with him. We had met about a year prior through a mutual friend, and this is the first time I've been invited out to his property. So I think I've just, I'm taking my time getting to know him. He's taking his time getting to know me. Meanwhile, there's 60 acres of beautiful old growth all around his house, private property. And so we walked and we walked and we walked after we done our initial interview. So this 2-part interview will have that walk, I believe, in part 2. Of course it'll be in part 2. And we find some interesting stuff, especially on the way back home. And there is a mystery underground at Forrest Walker's private domicile and extended property. So we'll see where this goes. It ain't far from where I live, by where the crow flies. So we will hopefully have more to come regarding some of these mysteries here at Forrest Walker's residence. But you're going to hear us from his balcony overlooking Mount, I think it's called Mount Olympus, out here in the Olympic rainforest. And it is a stunning day, beautiful day. And it was a great talk. We were meeting for the first time and kind of getting a feel for our mutual positions. And there's a lot of metaphors being used along the way. You'll hear us talk about dancing. We never actually dance a jig together here, but there's a lot of talking about dancing here as relates to the dance of the mystery of getting to know, in particular, the Sasquatch mystery, and that's what we're going to primarily be talking about here. So this is part 1 of my conversation with a new friend, a new interview, and a new voice in this community, Forrest Walker. I've had a chance to get to know you for the last, I think it's been about 12 months since I've met you, but the first time I've been out to your property, and it's a beautiful stretch of land. It's one that you've lived on for well over, I think you said 15 years? Yeah, and just basically you, the trees here, and one dog, and a mystery that circulates not only your property but this general area. I mean, everybody knows the general idea of where I live in Washington, but the specifics of the things that have happened out to your property here is someone who I'll call an extended experiencer, someone who has had prolonged cat and mouse activity from, we'll just use the word Bigfoot. I'm looking right now at a spot behind you where there was what looks to be a blind put up by something that has been watching your general workshop area. So before we get into those kind of interesting things, and we'll be walking your property somewhat this afternoon, tell people a little bit about what you feel comfortable telling them, because first of all, you are anonymous. We're using the name Forrest right now. And tell people a little bit about yourself, what you feel comfortable saying.
I guess it's the interrelationship between the land you live on and come to occupy and whatever it is that has been here and is here. So that continues to evolve. Your understanding continues to evolve and change. As a lot of people put it, I think it's kind of a dance when you invite whatever responds. And I think if you tend to ignore whatever goes on, all of this phenomenon, it can kind of ebb away, but I'm constantly reminded in little ways that there is something here playing around a bit, and that does want to be noticed if you have the eyes to notice it. But as you know, you can walk out and not notice a stick stuck in the ground at 45 degrees over and over in different places, or bends or whatever. So you know, it's just kind of depends on the eyes you have to see, and maybe the background you have to you know, kind of wonder what this is.
And these are not only your eyes, and I'm not going to name any names, but you've had people out to your property scouting out Bigfoot activity because they claimed to, you know Bigfoot activity, and so they pointed out things to you as well along the way here. Have any of those claims that they've made, have they added up yet? Are you finding consistency on the things that they're saying? Oh, there's a hummingbird.
Just
yeah, beautiful. That's a good sign. Are there any consistent notes from each one of these people on things that they found?
Well, I think anything in life, you can go to the individuals I've had out here that are, I guess you'd call researchers, or people that you might know their names. They have their ideas that they bring with them from their life's experiences and what they know, and it may be in line with what I know or think, and it may not. I think the more eyes on something, the better, and the more that people can have diverse backgrounds and look at things. You might get information from me, I might get information from you. So people that have been out point things out to me, I point things out to them. But for me, if it's a journey, when I first started being aware of these things going on here and wanted some answers, I contacted a person that we both know and pretty much asked him to come out. At that point, I didn't really know him, and the thing was, please tell me if I'm full of crap and if I'm imagining this, and you know, I just want somebody, because who can you talk to? Somebody to have another pair of eyes on what's going on here. And so when other people come out, again, they take their baggage with them, they take their ideas, but I think any of us in life, to formulate an opinion on anything, you've got to have a lot of diverse opinion that you take or disregard. YouTube was a huge tool for me early on, because I could look at some researchers or some people making videos, and they might refer to another person that they trusted, and pretty soon you have a network of pretty trustable people that have kind of ideas in line, and then you've got a lot of stuff that doesn't fall into that category, that can be misinformation that might purposely or just by chance lead you away from some ideas. And so I think you need to kind of round up, in Bigfoot and in life, people that you can bounce ideas off of, people that will tell you when you are full of crap in their opinion, and bounce back and forth with that. And there you can start to formulate your own opinions and ideas.
Now, both the people that you had out here, though, have pretty unconventional ideas of what Sasquatch is. So let's start there. You were not talking about run-of-the-mill primatologist or...
Apers?
Yeah, apers out in your community. Would you be opposed to having an aper out here? Are you already leaning a certain direction to the where you'd feel like you'd be stepping back having an aper?
Well, anybody can come and see and maybe learn or have an experience or hear a story that goes into their database. But, you know, if we talk about, you know, one of the really well-known researchers that's really into footprints, you know, I was at a convention type thing that you were at, you know, and we were kind of chiding back and forth with the box he had himself put into, that you cannot accept any data or stories from outside that box, you know, so for whatever reasons that person has to stay within certain boundaries. And I think in science, you know, having any kind of boundary limits your scientific approach. You have to look at everything, not deny anything, and and take all the input in, you know, and then you're going to process it through your processor that has all of your crap, you know, that your limits and what you can think. So my experience here only goes to what I have physically seen, and then again, if we get to talking about waking dreams and things like that, and just senses of, you know, vibes from feathers or whatever that you find that you might discount initially, then you have to step back and go, well, maybe this is something that's all in my head, and maybe I've learned not to listen to these things that are all in my head, and maybe I should listen more to things that are all in my head and not try to get my gears meshed with the gears of society and everything else just to fit in, because, life is a rock tumbler and our edges are precious. And when we all end up being smooth stones, it might look cool to all the other smooth stones, but you don't have your edge anymore,
Right.
So
What is your edge?
the edge is asking and questioning and sometimes getting in people's faces a bit, and in the just a tradition that I have of, I'm not going to say the light is red when it's green,
You're very no nonsense. You're known for that in the community, right? People go to Forrest to get the real scoop.
Well, I don't know, all people. There are people that will avoid going to any individual that if their scoop is going to threaten their fragile construct of how things are.
Yeah.
And so I would look to people that their construct of how things are can always change and morph and go in different directions. And so if we look at the phenomenon here and you say Bigfoot, and I that just always has this cartoonish connotation to me. I just always say Sasquatch.
Right.
But I wouldn't even say that, because the more people I get to know and individuals that have been out here might say, well, that's a physical embodiment of something that is far beyond an ape or an ape-human hybrid. And, then again, I have the benefit of knowing that the Ketchum DNA study that has been disregarded a lot, we both know people that were involved in that, that meticulously gathered evidence and went to universities and came back with 80% human, 20% unknown primate, mitochondrial DNA running back 30,000 years. And so if you're looking for science, well, that is science. That is what scientific approach showed us that this entity is. But again, if you get to apers, well, okay, so that's what we've got, and that ape is running around here and sure is smart and can avoid us, all the time. But then you start hearing other stories from sources that you kind of put some trust in. You go, there's something more going on there. Is there something in the human mind or something in a discipline that can make a human being able to run through walls? And then if Sasquatch is 80% human and 20% who knows what, can that entity then do things like that? Or if we have psychics, or if we have empaths, or if we have anything like that, remote viewers that science and the military uses remote viewers, science knows that is there, then why can't we think that, well, maybe this evolved humanoid creature has those abilities as well? And then if you have that in a brain that is as big as ours, or maybe proportioned to their body, and they don't have all the distractions of, hey, is my mic working? Is that camera going right? I hope my girlfriend's doing okay. Yeah, that guy needs to do this for me, and I sure need a new car, and all the stuff that is running in our heads all the time, the way we're wired up. If we were free of that and just in our environment, the natural world that we're in, here, over generations and generations, what would that humanoid mind be able to do? And so we don't know. And then the real question is always well, let's look back at us from that humanoid perspective. What do we have to offer to that consciousness? I don't think we have a whole lot to offer.
But you're a pretty well-traveled guy. I mean, you strike me as kind of like an old beatnik type mentality, like you would have fit in well with the Jack Kerouac kind of thinking, like just roll with the rhythm of life, and kind of, you're very good at improvisation. I can already see that just in the way you live your life as an artist. So did anything strike you as someone in your 20s that, hey, because we talked a little bit about this inside here, there was a moment where you thought, wait a second, life isn't like that. I can have this whole other experience, and you're shifted thinking. So what was that moment?
I suppose the moment was realizing that if I spent 8 hours of my day doing any task for any kind of entity, corporation, business, whatever, no matter what I thought at a young age, that I would repel the badness of that or the negative parts of that I didn't want to be, that I could still be myself and express myself and fall down and stand up and do whatever in life. There was an epiphany for me that I have to give all of that up. I have to jump out of the airplane and hope the parachute opens. And I think everybody I know, and you talk about, Jack Kerouac and all that, and, I'm aware of that and those people, but I think if we're all traveling on parallel paths that you might see and connect, I don't necessarily know that person's over there traveling his path his way. I'm on mine, and you may step back with your analytical mind and go, well, you're like that. And that's always good information for people to say, well, you remind me of, or that's this or that. But there's a lot of people I know that try to put on the mask of being like that.
Right.
And you're not that because you didn't travel that path. You didn't strip down naked in the wilderness and go, I'm going to find my way and make my way, and I'm going to fall down and get up and fall down and get up, and that's what's going to make me at the end of this journey.
You're not a live action role player or LARPer, as they call it, someone who shows up in the costume of someone that has this experience. You really have the life experience, and I know only a fraction of your story, but I wonder if you've ever toyed around with the idea that maybe that type of personality is attractive to these beings that are kind of nomadic and go where the wind goes and seem to come in when we're in these liminal states of transition. What do you think of that theory?
Well, I think just like with you and me, we sit down and we start talking, and I've known you, a bit, and hey, how you doing, and what's your latest story and all that. But as we start having a conversation like this, we're having a dance. And so when I start responding to phenomenon here, I'm engaging in a dance with the unknown. And one of the phrases out there is read the room. If you're out there spewing what you're doing and people aren't listening to it, well, you got to kind of change your approach. You've got to maybe not dumb down what you're doing, but you've got to adapt so that you won't alienate people and you can try to get your point through. So if we are in a process of reading the room here with the phenomenon that goes on, that's what it's all about in life, is reading other people, reading the room, and then establishing what your direction and purpose is. And that's really hard because we're all clouded with our 9-to-5s and what we do, and very little time for ourselves. You don't get that. You think you do sometimes, to step away for a day or two, or go to the lake, or do whatever, or do this. Yeah. So, see, what you're doing is, in a way, what I've done is that you're following your passion and your heart, and maybe you would say, as I do, it's not about I knew what I would do. I was always aware of what I couldn't do and what I wouldn't do. And so when you start...
And so were they.
And so you reduce down, can't go there, can't do that, went there, tried that, gave it a good shot, not going to be for me. And so it distills down to, well, I guess this is that little trail I'm on, and I don't know where it's going. And all these people that are on the safe trail keep looking at me and saying, there's nothing but bad for you down there, Well, that's their idea if they went down that trail and their little bag of tricks they carry with them,
Which is interesting because you seem cautious about going down this trail of engaging. I mean, here you are alone in prime real estate for having contact. But yet it's arm's length. I asked you if you went outside at night and did things like night sits, or if you've seen the lights. And your answer was just like, well, I don't know if I'm going to do that, or I'm ready for that, or something to that effect. What, this dance that you have the possibility of dancing, since I've danced it somewhat, what do you think the consequences are of that would negatively affect your life?
It depends on what stage of your life you're in at any given time. If I'm at a stage of life where with work or personal things or whatever, I've got to put a huge amount of energy into those things. As I mentioned to you earlier, it ends up being, am I being responsible by engaging another whatever in this dance? Am I a good dance partner? Or am I inviting somebody over that I'm not going to be a good host for? Do I have an idea of my end game? What do I want out of this? What is my motivation? Well, I think in Sasquatch, there's a lot of people that want to be the one who brings it all together and shows everybody just what is. Yeah, and so they want to be Jane Goodall, or they want to be whoever and bring this all, and that ends up being ego bound. And I think one of the main things in life, whether or not it's Sasquatch or whatever, is getting rid of the ego and acknowledging when you've done good things, whatever, but not saying, well, look at what I did, because it's not the end of your story yet either. And so you might be, way up high and at the best ever, but, tomorrow the economy crashes and your little thing falls down. So then you're going to find out who you are and what it really is, because everything gets stripped away. And can you rebuild maybe under different circumstances? Are you like the little spermatozoa going to that egg and you're the one that's going to find that thing, And
so is any of that fear, Forrest?
I think if you're not wired up with fear in your DNA, you didn't survive the cave bears and everything, So we have to be wary and look around for fear. But then fear is also related to fear of what's the final price to pay. Well, nobody's getting out alive. We're all going to go to wherever it is we're going to go to, and we all have very different ideas of where that is. So what am I afraid of? Well, is it the long-term, starving to death and hassle of not making a living in this society and being homeless like a lot of people are, or not finding a place to mesh and be part of society? So we're wired up to fear not being part of the mass mind in the society, and those that do stray onto any other path are often looked a bit down on, and quite often not understood, because you have to construct that box around yourself with barriers to work within society, because you have the fear of not having a place to belong. And unlike whatever lives out in the woods, we are incredibly dependent on shelter and warmth and heat and, these days food supply and the food chain and everything else. So the fear is, as COVID showed us, well, God, what happens to me if the food chain goes down, the food supply? Well, here I am in a city, and I can't do anything, so who am I? I'm a component part. I'm an ant in this anthill,
Right.
So not to say that I'm not on my own anthill, but it's a little bit different one than somebody that has to do a 9 to 5. So if you get back to fear, we've all got that fear. And if you get to physical fear about going out at night or whatever, well, they shot a 140-pound cougar out here just the year I moved in. There are bear. I've walked up on bear a few times in my life, and it's been fine, but it cannot be fine.
Right.
So no matter what you're doing at night, as helpless as we are, really as little critters walking around the daytime, if we don't have our guns and whatever, at night you're that much more vulnerable. So you've got to be at peace with that vulnerability.
Your curiosity has a borderline.
Well, the whole thing is, right now, and talking to you is probably an indicator of it, I backed off of the dance because, as so many people, Christopher Noel talks about it, it's like, be careful. Somebody we know talks about it, where he went out and engaged and they end up at his house, So I go out in the woods and engage and they end up right in my yard, And it's like, well, so you're okay to come into our places that we sleep and live with our children and rumble around and do things. And sometimes it's, well, how does this feel to you if we come back to you? And so there's the mirror held up to you. It's like, what do you have to offer us? So as somebody told me, they know you, we are observed, and whether or not we're observed just by physical beings and a blind we might go see that looks like it's watching the workshop, if we do have interdimensional or beings that can cloak and be right around us, well, how much do they know about us? How much do they know about your core person? Maybe that with all of your trappings, you don't know about yourself, that you're a parasite on the planet. You're part of the machine that eats that forest up that they need to live in and everything else needs to live in. So you can say, well, I'm not part of that, but well, your house is built with 2x4s, and it goes on and on and on. So
let's go back to that quote that you heard from this individual about they know you. What do you think of that quote, and have you got any proof of it while you've lived here that that's true?
Well, just being approached again, with the evening that I had there's 3 of us here at 2 a.m, and I'm just going, well, this is your head, and that's a name people put on it, so that means different things.
We're talking about telepathy. You're getting a message.
I'm getting something that's telling me this, and I'm doubting it, because everything that flits into your head you can't act on. I can fly like a bird. Don't think so. So that, but then me doubting it, then it's punctuated with a huge slap on the side of the house. So what's the statistical probability of an owl or something flying into the side of my house at the same time at 2 o'clock in the morning that I am having these thoughts, So for me, that was a very important time, that the slap on the side of the house, and I'm building up my participation and reacting and to structures or whatever's going on here on the property, then I felt like it was, okay, here we are. You're going to step out on that deck and see whatever you see or do whatever you do. Are we going to grab you and take you away and you're never seen again? Are we going to give you the gift of knowledge of everything we are? What are we about? And I won't say I failed, but I decided to turn on all the damn lights and not go out on the deck.
And here, by the deck, you mean step out here?
Yeah, step out. Well, that mind speak, as you say, is going on, and something slapped the side of the house to punctuate it into this realm that, there's something physical here that is doing this. And so at that point, and these thoughts go through your head all the time, what am I here for? What am I doing this for? What's my end game? And that's a really important thing for everybody to wonder, what is my end game? Where am I going here? Right. And so again, if I respect what this is, I'm not going to invite you over if I don't have time like we are right now to sit down and discuss. So in my mind, if I start down that road again and entice and dance and all that, I can get things back to the level they were at one point. And where do I go from there? Well, it's several years later. I'm in a little different space in my life than I was, and maybe I can take some time to do that and see where this goes. But it can't be out of ego. I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be this. I think it can help my understanding, but I think that there's a cap and a limit on what we get to know and understand. One of the people we know is just like, well, this is a national security issue. This is something that if you don't think every government agency that possibly could be hasn't researched this thing and knows what it is and wonders if the Russians have it and can weaponize it or whatever, that's not what I, want to be involved in is, what do I have to offer you, And so for me, well, what I have to offer that if you know me, as that person said, I offer you that I love your home as much as you do. I'm sorry I shoehorned in here and put a structure and live where maybe you used to sit on this knoll and look out at those mountains, and maybe your grandfather did, and maybe generations back you have, and maybe I've disrupted, your use of this place. But if you know me, you know that I value it the same as you do, and I want to preserve it as much as I can. But I have to do it in my toxic way of being human and going out and making some kind of industry and using resources and all that. But for me, the question in life is, can a human being that turns out to be me live a life and do all the things one needs to do to survive? And the term today is carbon neutral, but can I leave more and disturb less than I took? And I think somewhere in the great orb of knowledge that we all go back to, there needs to be somebody that, well, you could never do that. Well, that was doable, that could be done. And the timing of the times you live in, economics and everything like that. The cities grow and change, and 40 years ago in this region, there were more opportunities and different opportunities than there are now. So you take into account, I'm lucky and blessed to have walked in these times and these steps. I lament that, the younger folk now coming up don't really have the same options and opportunities and everything. So, for me, that's, do they know you? Well, I hope they know that this is what I'm about, is to not disturb their
Have they
work.
given you specifics that says, well, we'll uncover a little bit here that you're an artist. Have they done anything, for example, to say, hey, we're artists too? Have you seen any little signs of humanity or culture from them?
Well, I think if you cut to the photograph I sent you of what I call the star, that is a beautiful thing. And when I first saw that, I looked at it, and what I was struck with was the dexterity it took to make it, the intricate weaving, the symbolism. There's a lot of dexterity going on. There is a lot of artistry there. It's maybe an abstract piece, but something took all of these disjointed pieces of wood and sticks from out in the environment and put them together in a certain way and constructed something that to me represented a star raised above a mass below, And so what does that mean? What does that represent? Well, what does an abstract painting mean or represent to anybody? You approach it with your ideas and your burdens and your walls that you have, and that's what it is to you. So if you look at that picture of that star structure, it's going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and somebody will look at it and go, well, that just all fell together that way, And you can try to prod them to, but how did that piece go over that piece and be woven through that piece? It's just, well, you're just silly. You that just happens in the woods.
Yeah, but yet you seem like a level-headed guy enough to the point where you understand the skeptic in your own heart saying, well, you got to experience these things for yourself. It's very difficult to walk out on someone's property and follow along with their narrative here. You know the land better than anybody else, and you're no stranger to understanding, the particulars of sticks and wood by any means. You should understand that very well. But you, how often do you see stick structures out here on your own, or do you have other people point them out to you?
I find them on my own. I have individuals notice them, and like I told you a while ago, I think I was out looking on a piece of property I don't go to a lot, and looking for structures and everything, and I wasn't finding anything. And for some reason, I was also taking pictures of just the forest and everything. And for some reason, I'd set the timer on the camera to take a picture. And I decided it wasn't going to work, and I put the camera down, and it took the picture as the camera's down towards my side, and I looked in the screen, and there's a small stick structure there that I hadn't seen. I was almost stepping on. And so that calls into question all kinds of things. Well, am I imagining that? Was it this weird synchronicity thing where I wasn't seeing anything and something put everything together, and it's just like, well, here it is in your viewfinder,
Right.
And now I see it, and so once it was kind of pointed out to me that way, I started to see it. So as you say, if we go walking around, you have things you look for, things you've seen before. I've been out with other researchers that have certain things that they know to be true, and certain things that they look for. One researcher I was out with a few months ago, at dusk, we would go out walking, starting off at, in the summertime, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and walk until dusk, and then walk back, at dark. Related a story of being out with a pretty well-known Lakota individual that has a lot of experience with Sasquatch, and coming down a trail, I think after having some rocks pegged at him and everything, there were the sound of birds, but they were an inhale kind of bird sound that was not noticeable or identifiable to this person, who then went to the Audubon database and tried to find that sound and couldn't find it. And the individual she was walking with said, well, that's Sasquatch. And, well, it's Sasquatch, it's bird sounds. And so that individual, again, was out with a lot of different individuals whose name would be known, and got into a lot of mindsets and realities of a lot of different people, from apists to woos to, everything else. And so we were out, and robins are singing and doing their thing at dusk, and she goes, well, do you hear that? And, no, I don't hear that. Well, no, it's that sound. It's not a bird. And no, I don't. And that person got right up in my face, inches away, and goes, you don't hear that? And at the second she did that, up about 5 feet above my head to the right, a very loud inhale bird sound happened. And I mean, right there. And okay, so did an unknown species of bird that, she's not able to identify, do that just by chance? Right. Or was I being whopped upside of the head, just like I was whopped upside of the head when I had the mind speak with the side of the house being hit? Was something just saying, yeah, we are here. This is something.
All right, so there is part one of part two, my conversation with Forrest Walker, and you get a sense of us getting to know one another and our own mutual perspective. And he's a super cool guy, and I wish I could tell you more, but he's a cool cat, and I'm glad to meet him. And part two is only going to get better, so definitely tune into that. Like I said, if you want to go to YouTube, you'll be able to actually see us have this conversation. And because Forrest doesn't want to be on camera, you'll get the cowboy side of his jean jacket and cowboy hat as we're overlooking the mountains there. It's a great view, except for the fact that I'm filling up half the screen there. But then we head off into the woods, and you'll only be able to appreciate that, except for the theater of mind. And I should go to see the real thing over at YouTube. So when you go over there, just hit the like button, the thumbs up button, share it if you can, and then just leave a brief comment. Doesn't have to be long, just mention something in there. I appreciate everybody subscribing to the channel there, and give us all sorts of flexibility to do some cool stuff this summer, including, I do want to mention this, that we are having a conference coming up May 1st and 2nd. Again, just like we did before with our Sasquatch and Anomalous audio analysis conference that we did last month, we're going to do that again in May. This time we're having 2 guests in. I'm going to tell you more about them and the structure of everything coming your way. We'll be doing a good majority of this conference virtually, but you'll be able to join in live from wherever you are and pipe your big beautiful face on the big screen if you want to, and speak with the speakers as we all meet in little old Arlington, Washington. And I'll tell you more about that coming up. All right, coming up next week will be part 2 to my conversation and video with Forrest, as well as, I think after that will be the Maury Island Slag Forest video. I think weather should clean up by then. I will let you know. Stay tuned. And of course, if you'd like to talk to me, get a hold of me at strangebrowradio@gmail.com and shoot me a message. All right, I'll see you in the trees.
Машинка новая.
Season 2, Part 2, Episode 2, with Should We Dance and Forrest Walker. My name's Tobe Johnson, and you're listening to Strange Brow Radio. Thanks for listening and tuning in. You can find us over at YouTube, and I'll tell you more about what's happening over there in a second. But thank you to our sponsor, Feral by Aaron, ERYN, Alchemy Sound Tools, over at Etsy. If you mention the show, say you heard in the comments section you heard about Feral by Aaron at Strange Brow Radio, and there'll be something extra in your box. Just write it in the comments there. Okay, next up, my conversation, of course, with Forrest Walker, Part 2. We'll be right back. All right, before we begin today, I want to talk to you real quick about the Thylacine Awareness Group of Australia. You'll be able to find them over at YouTube. Neil Waters is heading things up. Neil is a previous guest. Man, it was like 2 years ago when we were struggling to do live events and talk to guests at the same time at the Axe and Fiddle in Cottage Grove, Oregon. But since that time and well before it, Neil has been immersed in providing awareness and looking for and proving that the thylacine, that would be not the Tasmanian devil, but the thylacine is way stranger looking than the Tasmanian devil. Go look up what a thylacine is, and you may or may not recognize it. Chances are you've never seen one because supposedly they were extinct long ago, but something tells me that that's not the case. And Neil Waters has suspected for a long time via the amount of game cam footage, witness reports, eyewitness testimony, and tracks that they are alive and well. And so Neil broke more than 3 or 4 days ago now and let everybody know in advance that March 1st, 2021 was going to be the day where he was going to drop some evidence. And so he did. And the evidence that he dropped was a game cam shot, color game cam shot at forest floor level of what appears to be a baby Joey thylacine walking to and from a game cam. Now, he's well aware that there would be naysayers out there giving evidence that it was this, that, or the other, but he's fairly certain, and I think he has all his ducks lined in a row to prove that this is indeed what it shows. So if seeing is believing, go see for yourself. Go check out his site. Also, you can go back and listen to our previous episode. I think it's episode number 7 with Neil and Alex Evans, who is an artist that does work for Neil, artist renderings of the thylacine, and even makes little sculptures. So really exciting. If they're back, they're back. You want to check that out over at Neil Waters' website, the Thylacine Awareness Group of Australia. I should also make mention that I am fresh back from Maury Island. The Strange Stroll is complete. If you don't know what a strange stroll is, well, it's your chance to send me on an adventure. Just like the Choose Your Own Adventure books, you can send me to one of 2 places. The polls usually go up every month or every other month. And as the weather gets better, maybe I'll do more of them. And so the last time people voted, they sent me to Maury Island. They sent me packing overnight to where the reported Maury Island UFO incident happened, where a donut-shaped craft sprayed forth molten lava, or what they're calling slag, over the beaches of Maury Island. There's eyewitness testimony. There's a documentary out there you can download, the Maury Island incident. So I went there and rattled some cages and actually turned into a 2-day event. So that's going to be coming up, I believe, next week. So get ready for that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can be alerted. Hit the little bell icon so you can get the alerts when that's all ready to go. And then we will have the next strange stroll tagged along into this one. So the voting will start as soon as that one goes up, and you'll be able to vote on where I'll head maybe sometime in June or May or something like that. We have some busy months coming ahead here. So I don't want to spread myself too thin. All right, next up, part 2 with Forrest Walker and Should We Dance? Now, when we last left off with Forrest Walker, he was describing a moment where the witness and the experiencer researcher that was at his place with him, they heard something in the bush, and the researcher was certain it was an unidentified whistle sound that couldn't be easily pinpointed to a certain bird. Forrest did not hear this sound, and the researcher gets up in his face, and then they hear a secondary whistle, which Forrest did hear, I believe, the secondary whistle. And so we're going from that point. They're describing what happens to a person to the point where they get up into kind of a stranger's face, the researcher being the stranger to Forrest, really, and getting kind of obsessed with the subject matter. Adrenaline's pumping, you're wanting to prove everything, and we're going to go from there as far as Forrest's take on what's happening to a person when they get like that, and then I chime in and we go from there. Now, there is some field video as well, so pay particular attention to the end of the video. Hint, hint, nod, nod, because there'll be some interesting stuff that happens at the very end of this video here. So don't turn it off just when we leave the balcony. All right, the extended part 2 conversation, and hopefully not last conversation, with Forrest Walker.
The mindset of the individual here that got up into your face, I know that mindset, and I sometimes have to talk myself down from that mindset because it is one of total immersion, obsession with the subject matter, and it bypasses social niceties. It's like the equivalent of just reaching your hand inside of a sandbox and just trying to find the treasure chest at all costs. You don't care how much sand leaves the sandbox. I'm trying to go with a Forrest analogy right now. But I understand that mindset to the person. I understand this person somewhat too. But have you ever seen another subject matter that brings that kind of personality of someone? Because you've seen more of life than I have, Forrest. So is this subject matter unique at what it does to people and change them? Or are these people already tainted by their own mental state?
Life is a multifaceted bunch of subject matters. And so if you work for the evil corporation, then you're going to compartmentalize yourself and going, yeah, I do, but I'm not part of that, And so the Sasquatch study only brings out your core of who you are, and maybe bouncing off other people, you can learn lessons and you can walk away in something that didn't seem good or right at the time, or a month later or 2 months later. Eventually you might get perspective on it and look back and go, oh, that started me thinking this way, or that opened this door for me. Now I look back and I wish I had said this or not done that or whatever. So we just constantly learn. We have to evolve the boundaries that we have, And so anybody heading into a subject with huge amounts of knowledge and huge, like an encyclopedia-like brain, that's really great. Google has that for me. I always say, I listen to things, and the word grok came up in dealing with this person, and it's like, I don't necessarily remember every researcher that said this or that, or every source in life that I read that said this, but it rings true, and that becomes part of me. And I may not be able to give you the exact source every time. Sometimes I can, but I only let certain things in. And then I only, and I certain things I go, I can't go there, that's racist, hatist, whatever it is, that leads to a place I can't be. And so you evolve your sense of reality and what you're going to believe in and what you allow in to your reality. So the interesting thing with this person was when things didn't work out, sharing realities, here with Sasquatch or whatever, I was sent a story about a Buddhist monk, a Zen monk, and this was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And the story was regarding tea. And so there was a professor at this event where they were up on the stage, and the professor wanted to know Zen. And the monk leans forward on the table and starts pouring some tea into a little cup. And pretty soon the cup's full and it's overflowing. And the professor's going, well, stop, it's full. And the monk sits back and says, you want to know Zen, but your cup is full of knowledge and ideas. And so there is not room, And so for me, again, it's, we're all wired up differently, and I love saying that, but my brain is wired up not to look at things in a certain way, but look at another way. And so I try to keep my cup empty, really. And of course I have preconceived notions about things, but you don't want your ideas, like a researcher that focuses only on footprints or whatever, to, well, I'm not going to let in any woo factor. I'm not going to let this in. So that was a beneficial story to me. And then as life being the mirror and reflecting back, I think, well, I think your cup is fuller than mine is. I think you're describing yourself maybe not knowing it, and that I strive to keep my cup empty and entertain all teas, and then I want to dump it out, and whatever sticks to the rim is, what stuck with me. But that body of stuff, I want to let go, because otherwise, in our brains, we start all these cross-referencing, and that has to make sense with this, and that has to do this. And a lot of times it doesn't. It's just kind of disjointed information.
Yeah, but given the subject matter, it's different than talking about something, tactile. It's different than talking about, it's like talking about or a religion. It's talking about something that's so profound. Like I was talking to Doug Hychek, and people can look at the podcast I did with him. He's the guy that... the producer of Monster Quest on History Channel, and he invents cameras, and he's a scientist, and he was talking about being outsmarted by Sasquatch, and he said, if after 30 years I've been outsmarted again, I may have to rethink my approach.
Outsmarted.
I mentioned to Doug regarding the phenomena, the PTSD. And how it affects people's fundamental core of who they are and what is possible and the narrative that has been explained. So therefore it is a lot like a religious experience for a lot of people. And they either choose to entertain this, what's been shown to them, or they deny it. So for that, this obsessive nature that gets under people's skin, I mean, you're talking to a guy that has gone at 3 a.m. to the end of a logging road based on a hunch, alone waiting in the snow. So what is it about...
And how did that work out for you?
Yeah, exactly.
But how did that work out for you at 3 a.m? Was the hunch right?
The hunch was not only wrong, but it was progressively wrong over a period of years. And it took me a while to figure out why it was wrong. It was wrong because... it's the difference between like putting on the Chinese finger cuffs and pulling your fingers to get them out of there really quick, or slowly sliding it like, okay, this is how you release yourself from something. That's so the equivalent of that is being an ambulance chaser, like I was, saying, oh, I got to get to be the the first one here to cast this, to do that. And when you learn to step back and wait,
they choose you, you don't choose them.
So what do you think of that comment?
In the comment, the root of that was...
Well, I've heard Tom Powell say that, just like, you're chosen, you sit back at the campfire and wait, and if they pick you out of a lineup, then you're the... So do you think that's possible? You think that's the way this works?
Well, I think it's kind of dangerous to think yourself as the chosen one, or, in any situation. So I think, again, you've just got to look at, well, I'm the one in the middle of the woods here that didn't clear cut it and take some cash and go buy a Ferrari, and so maybe they want to, if they know my mind, interact with that a little bit more than maybe somebody else, you know. So I think there's degrees and really a lot of shades of gray of you know, who are they interacting with when they interact with anybody, you know. And so one of the apists, you know, I've learned is, you know, just deadly afraid of Sasquatch, you know, and absolutely an aper, and there's nothing other than huge, you know.
Wait, you've heard a story about an aper that's deadly afraid of Sasquatch?
Yeah, and it's his career. He's paid to do it, you know.
Right.
And so he goes out, but if that's the vibe you're putting out, you know, what are you going to get back? Are you going to get to level 2, 3, or 4? And you have to stop and think and know is, I'm probably more out there right now in doing this interview than I really want to be, but how many people out there that have moved into areas all up and down the coast or wherever there's forest, whatever, have experiences, have interacted with that experience in their own special way and just only need to keep it to themselves, you know? And so if you're really into it, you're probably not going to broadcast a lot of information about what you know. And then if you've prepared that little stew, you know, is it edible for a lot of the public, you know? And so, you know, it's so individual, I think, you know. And then people sitting back and watching YouTube vids or something that are living in an apartment or whatever, it's, well, you know, I think the best way to experience whatever you might experience, if you're going to get chosen or if you're going to be one that gets some phenomenon, is to spend a lot of time out in the forest and care about it, and reflect back and just ask yourself, what do I have to offer? You know, why would anything want to come talk to me, you know, or interact with me or whatever, you know? So I think it always gets back to who am I and what do I have to offer in this situation.
Do you think certain people are chosen? Picked out of a lineup from, you know, the rest of the populace to say, oh, you're useful, or we know you or your family? What do you
I don't know. That gets to all of life, you know. Are we chosen to hit the lottery and then, you know, have all of our dreams come true with all the money we want? And then are we going to do something good? Are we going to go blow it? Are we going to, you know, so life is about being chosen or not, but is that choice random, you know, and just...
Yeah. Are you a randomness guy or are you a synchronicity guy? Because you strike me as a synchronicity guy.
Well, again, if you start looking at certain things, if you've got the construct that there are certain boundaries that, you know, life is this, and I'm going to die and go to heaven, and if I go to church every Sunday, this is what I need to do, and, you know, you know, that's one way of looking at it. But I think how we all process whatever comes at us is reality. I mean, you and I can have totally different realities, you know, of what life is and where we're at, you know. I think we self-prophesize where we end up quite a bit. You know, my thing in life has always been, if there's 1,000 people in my situation, one's going to get out, and I got to be that one. So I can't panic. I've got to thoughtfully figure out what everything is and proceed forward. Going with a positive attitude, there's always some good to come out of something and some way out of this, you know,
Right.
Even at the darkest times. So as far as being chosen, there is a lot of ego in that, you know, and that's where the whole Sasquatch community turns on itself, eats itself, you know, and it's just me, I'm the one. Well, isn't that subject over there what you should be reverent of and trying to understand? And if it is, and you're not an ape or all of these all-knowing things, doesn't it kind of know your root motivation and where you're going? And so, you know, again, it's maybe you gain respect, and I don't know, and I don't want to go ego, but maybe you gain respect by not proceeding forward when you don't feel it's time, and the slap on the side of your house comes and you go, you know, I'd love to give you guys some time and have you over, but it's not the right time for me, so I'm just going to continue to
make that decision aside from fear. If you can actually say, you know, intellectualize, it's not time for me yet.
Yeah, and the fear thing, I'll tell you, the older you get, somebody I knew years ago said, you know, the thing is, when you get older, there's a lot less runway. And so when you're older, there's less life to lose if you lose your life. And you look back and go, geez, I wish I'd done that, and I'd never know where that road would have gone or whatever. And so everything evolves and everything is fluid. And so my sense a few years ago of saying I that's not time to have you over and do this. Maybe it is now time to have them over and do this, and maybe I can switch focus to that. And not with some misguided thing as I'm going to be the one, I'm going to tell everybody what this is, or whatever. But, maybe they need somebody to talk to. Maybe they need to understand, what is with all your friends and people and, all of
Are you opposed to people that watch this reaching out somehow? Why are you doing this? I mean, you talked about maybe less runway
What's the
here.
$50,000?
Right. The free Starbucks. I mean, there's something that's happened over the last couple of years to where you feel like, well, I'm going to dance again. Why sit down and do an interview?
Well, because number one, it's with you. And I told you one of your interviews, somebody had disclosed a specific location. You said, oh, geez, maybe I'm going to go edit that out,
Which I forgot to do.
Yeah, but, well, it was too late. That's so well known. But it's the chemistry of, you and me interacting, the dance. It's the chemistry of Sasquatch, the dance. And my sense of where you want to go with this is I don't think you super have an agenda, as far as it needs to come out this way or that way. You're just hiking up the trail trying to see where the next turn leads, And so, in a way, I wasn't super planning on this interview, the way that it's come out. We were going to go walk and look at stuff. And, I think one of the things visually, if you're cutting away a lot to things we see later walking in the woods, and that's the visual people have rather than us sitting here, that's what we're talking about, is that ecosystem and that world. And there's some places around that are relatively undisturbed where we'll go to other places that are tree farms, that the monoculture is established, and it's just a farm, for to grow trees and harvest them and everything. So,
how many acres are we talking to walk on?
Here there's, we can go a long ways. We're 60 or so that we've got permission to be on.
There's acres you've never been on?
Oh, there's many acres I've never been on, and there's a lot of terrain that ends up being pretty steep, that is, not easy for us to navigate. We're going to wear ourselves out. And that said, there's a lot of terrain that people don't go into that can be long-term places, So my sense of this phenomenon is that it's kind of nomadic and moves around. And, if you talk to other researchers, one of our friends had pegged it down to with BFR reports, and the ones that aren't seen. Well, here I can say that these sightings cluster here at this time of the year. Well, that's when they're down on the beach and doing this. Well, here's up in the mountains with the blueberries, and here's this and that. And so, you can kind of see that they move around a lot. So the thing about somebody, well, where is that? I want to go there and see this. Yeah, good luck. It's you can take the most educated person as far as this phenomenon is to go out and try to have something happen, and it's not going to happen. You're not going to see anything unless it's you're allowed to see it or you're made to see it.
See, now that term allowed, that's something I find myself saying, and then I think about it like, gosh, that's giving it a lot of personage. It's almost like saying I'm the individual's chosen here. Does that feel weird for you to say that word allowed with them?
Allowed to do this?
Yeah, because you don't say that about raccoons. They've allowed me to. I guess if you were working in a primate sanctuary, you might say, well, I've been allowed to.
Well, again, everybody's got their realities wired up differently. I know somebody that was involved in the Ketchum DNA study. I trust the results of that, where we're talking about something that is 80% human and 20% unknown primate. And so I go to discrimination and treating others as you would want to be treating if this is a humanoid. And so I allow you to set your stuff up and talk to me today, and you allow me to talk, and we allow back and forth. That's the dance. And so we're always allowed and denied. It's like, ones and zeros, and, it's like, yeah, you can go here. No, you can't go there. And so you end up in talking to people, and, people I get to meet all the time. It's like, wow, they allowed me into a little inside story of their life that there was some trust established there and mutual trust. And then there's other people that's like, bam, the barriers go up. And you go, no, I don't think we're quite speaking the same language. And so we'll be pulled polite, but I'm not going to allow you into my space, you know.
But for the Ketchum study, you've referred to that on at least a couple times here in the last hour. That was a definitive study to the point where you've looked at the research and that you walked away satisfied with how the study was done, and it changed your perspective to the point where you say they allowed this moment to happen here because they're a person. I mean, that's a big moment to have. Not every flute player has even had that moment.
Again, your understanding builds brick by brick, you know, and sometimes it ends up being a wall that, you know, you can't get any more understanding or whatever. But that's another piece of evidence that I might not have so much credence in, but I know an individual that knows the backstory, that knows how that study was shelved and kind of attacked, and knows through that of sending up that flare that there are forces out there that keep the lid on things, you know. And so allowed is, we all allow this and that and the other thing, you know, so I don't have a problem with allowed, you know. The degree that you're allowed and maybe the degree that, you know, you get vetted maybe, you know, and so it's like, okay, you pass that little test, or, yeah, you brought this person on and showed them where we live and we didn't like that, you know, and you can cut to the picture of the compressed 4-inch diameter branch that I sent you, that I was up early on after having watched a lot of YouTube videos that I got a lot of good information out. Disregard some, you know, you take on information from others, but I went up and shot video and showed stick structures, sewed barricades and all that and narrated it, and I was not going to publish it. It was just a little exercise for me. Had the phone with me and did the thing. Well, I watched that after I shot it, and I had a weird out-of-body feeling experience that, okay, did I imagine it, whatever, but I felt that something was standing right with me, and nothing there, but it was just a different sense of time and space, I guess. And so, okay, you brush that off, you get done watching your thing, and you go on about your business. The next day, I came up, and this 4-inch diameter or so tree has been pushed over, bent over, and pushed back onto itself where it compressed into this S shape that a piece of hydraulic equipment would be needed to do. And so I didn't need anybody to explain to me that that was a show of power and strength, and that it was not appreciated that I went up there and used that technology. And it was something shown to me. And no, it wasn't the wind, and no, it's not this or that. That was something majorly huge and large that bent that over. And then you go, well, okay, but you know, I'm going to leave my cup empty. Was it done in the physical world? Was it done kinetically? Was it done, you know, from another dimension into this? You know, so I can start to run away and assume that I know a lot of things. Was it even Sasquatch? You know, I'll talk to some people. It's like, well, you know, hey, somebody told me this story, because I talk to a lot of people and we get onto the subject a lot. And I have dozens of Sasquatch stories from people that volunteer their experiences to me. And so, you know, it's all subjective. What did that thing? But it was at the time, right after I shot this video. It was in reaction to it, I felt, and it was clear as day to me that it was not appreciated, and I didn't do it since.
Okay, so now I want to ask you real quick about some of the common threads for people that live in hotspots. So we'll just call this a hotspot or a common ground for you and them. Common threads that people that are interested in this and that live with the phenomena. Let's start with objects around the property here that have either gone missing or moved, or things, unexpected things arriving in interesting places. Anything like that happen?
Well, a couple months ago, as things were starting to heat up and I was being a little more involved and, you know, back and forth, out in my driveway is a small cotton ball. I've got them inside, and nothing I have had anywhere near this, and it was just pristine and white and clean, was this little cotton ball. And I looked at that and I thought, that's just really weird. I can't explain it. And then, of course, well, you know, who knows? A bird dropped it. I don't know. And so I bring it in, and then that evening I sit down in the house And there is a second one over by the stereo television on the floor. And how that got there, I don't know, you know. And so, and why a cotton ball, why, you know, it has, and it's probably synthetic cotton, you know, I don't know. But it's smaller than you would use like in a pill jar or something to, you know, it's just like I ran through everything. What is this? Where did this come from? And I can't identify it, you know. So sometimes it just keeps you wondering and looking and watching, you know.
And it's not like you were in the medicine jar grabbing cotton balls on your way to work and then dropped it. It wasn't a moment like that.
You know, and again, I think any healthy person first starts with trying to doubt it and explain something away. And if you start looking for signs, and, well, you know, that cloud looks like it's telling me it's a fist. What does that mean, you know? So in this case, you know, that was not explainable, you know, and you get to, I showed you, I had contacted somebody about audio recording early on, and we were back and forth, and as you, I think, are aware, audio recording seems not to be as off limits as video, but I decided in talking to this person that I didn't want to infringe at all on some other person's space, and felt that might be taken badly, and so I decided not to do it. The next morning, and there's pictures of that, or you can film it later, 2 cherry trees, and cherry trees seem to be a major communication because they bend and they don't break a lot. 2 cherry trees, an inch and a half in diameter, are bowed over and intertwined and woven together with a smaller one below them, right out my kitchen window. Well, that wasn't there the day before. None of the other small cherry saplings did that before or since. They're still there. And I looked out at it, and I just, well, that's an intertwined couple and a smaller one, you know. And I mean, that's as clear in my head as anything. And it's, you know, if we are interrelated, we share DNA or whatever, you know, are we picking up on that, you know, vibe? But as you start to do your research or watch a lot of things, a lot of people liken what you find out in the forest, and a lot of 45-degree sticks in the dirt or whatever. Well, the Vietnamese used a lot of that for marking trails and giving information and whatever. And so when you go out balanced looking for different things, you start to see things like peeled off bark that's, you know, set over somewhere, and it's like, well, what does that, you know, things like that. So I get shown things all the time,
Right.
but again, it's in doing, in honoring that, it's like, I don't have time right now. That was really good. There's an area I mow, and repeatedly I would go mow that, and then maple tree branches would be thrown down into that big open area the next day, and it wasn't appreciated that I was down there doing things, you know. And one day I went back out and cleaned up all the maple stuff and laughed out into the woods, you know, and then just, ha, you know, that's really good, but I got to clean it up. And the next day there's another one, you know. And so I was having interactions, but somebody else would say, well, you know, you were imagining that, and that was all in your head. But you've got to take the entire bulk of the data that you have, either firsthand or secondhand from trusted sources. And then you start to go, well, that person sees this, that person over there sees this. This tends to be a narrative I can kind of get behind. And so this ends up being my belief system, you know.
Right. Did the cotton ball thing change your perspective at all? Or I mean, I know that you didn't have time that day to invest in it, but does your mind go back to that moment since you can't debunk it?
It's always in your mind. It's like, you know, why do I live in a house with, you know, 20-foot ceilings? Can somebody discorporate and come in here and stand there cloaked and, you know, be around me? Or was something in my house physically? You know, so what? But again, it's like a teasing, a taunting. But your mind goes, okay, so crazy people absolutely know they're sane. And so if I look at that and go, Sasquatch left it, well, no, maybe a poltergeist left it. No, maybe this or that, you know, or who knows what left it.
What about poltergeist? Do you have any ghost here?
Not really. I had one experience when I was in my early 20s of a house that had a poltergeist, and we were all sitting around one night, and they were talking about stuff that went on, and I was pretty much not buying it a whole lot, and then a doorknob just started shaking like hell, and there was nobody there,
But nothing on this land?
No, but again, one of the things is you can get people into your lives that will kind of summon that kind of stuff sometimes, and open up.
Have you noticed that when you've had people here, that the activity changes in that direction, or?
Not really, and I don't look for it. Again, it's a busy life. You've got things to do, and this is the getaway, the reward after you go do all that. And so, again, I'm not going to hike up a trail that I know goes to a mountaintop, and I only got goods to get a quarter of the way, and go, I didn't get the mountaintop, well, I wasn't prepared.
Right.
So that's the question, and maybe this is part of it. At this point, are you prepared? Do you want to head back in and start the dance? And what's your end game? What do you hope to gain from this? And so those are questions that talking today, and it's like, I'm just trying to pull no bullshit, what I really think and what I've seen out, and it's as beneficial for me. Thank you for the therapy session. But that's all we can do, and so
I'm trying, and I guess if I have a job, my quest, my interest is finding people that are dipping their toe in the waters of the supernatural, not just Bigfoot.
Right.
They've either been profoundly changed by it, profoundly disturbed by it, or have a more than a passive interest in the subject matter. And there's these common threads. Hauntings shouldn't belong in the world of Bigfoot, but they do. For some reason, houses seem to be affected in that way, and they show a lot of those attributes, like furniture will be moved, poltergeist type activity, chalky white sebum or handprints or body impressions on the interior and exterior of your house, your vehicle. Those are pretty common things. Lights would be another one, but you haven't seen those yet, have you?
Well, I did see a light with a researcher that we did some things with in the evening, and then again, the perspective of that tended to be different in the retelling to both individuals, and so what one person saw, the other person didn't see exactly that, but saw something else. And I think in other stories that person told me that's happened other times. It's like, well, saw that, and person, I didn't see that.
So the telephone game, it changes.
Yeah, and so what do you call forth? What do you allow? And we both know somebody that was having more and more experiences and stuff, and went out to psychics and certain things, and it's like at some point felt like he had to give up some free will to get to the next step, and that wasn't going to happen. And so things kind of cooled off, and so it's kind of the way I was. I kind of whipped things up in a subtle way in interacting with things, and it got to the point with the slap on the side of the house, and you can step out now and maybe see something or maybe know something that you don't know, but at that moment I wasn't ready, and so called your bluff. You're not ready for us, have a nice day. But then since then, and I'll show you walking on trails, there was an amazing starburst at the foot of a tree, and it was through pretty heavy brush, but there was like a tunnel that just went right to that thing, and so I'm trying to put it to the side and not think about it and everything, and go for a walk, and there's that thing, and I call it the hey, look at us moment. It's like, no, I'm not being allowed to just forget about you. You're still here, you're still a neighbor, and so you're just leaving me little things to see and come upon, to process in my own way, and so I could have just said, yeah, that neighbor broke onto the property and did this thing off in the middle of nowhere where he doesn't know I'll be walking or whatever, but you could convince yourself of that.
Well, you have a gate here too, right? I mean,
we have a gate, but the raw land goes on and goes to all kinds of different other properties and stuff.
So the lights you're kind of on the fence with as far as what one person saw compared to what you saw. What about missing time or anything that is remotely close to, an encounter of some kind where you can't account for sleep paralysis?
Yeah.
Nothing like that?
Well, you know, we can go into all kinds of things. When I was driving down to LA, I kind of had some missing things when I went down to go to school there, and I lost a couple hours on the coast. And, you know, these are weird stories that just don't seem to have anything to do with anything. But then I get to LA, and I was driving an Audi 100 at that time, and it always had issues with the alternator because the guy that owned it had just welded on a GM alternator to it. And I got there, and the alternator had broken off the mounts and was just sitting there. But the car had made it all the way down to LA with that, and it just didn't fall apart and break when I pulled up, and I had this 2 hours of missing time. I got back and drew pictures of UFOs and aliens and stuff, and I just didn't know why I was doing it. So it's like, well, you know, if you have missing time, do you know you've got missing time? If I'm out here on my own hiking in the woods and I'm not keeping track of time, how many missing hours or whatever could I be experiencing that there's nobody there to say, hey,
Well, okay, but this is incredible. So not only missing time, but you had a missing experience where this car part shouldn't be where it was.
Well, it should have just, the belt should have pulled the thing off and thrown it on the ground and everything. And I get there and lift up to, you know, to see how this is done. And it's just sitting there loose, you know. But there's been time, you know, similar stories where that shouldn't be and that doesn't add up, you know.
Okay, but what about the drawings?
The drawings were just kind of obsessive compulsive, you know. I probably still have one or two. Freaking little flying saucer.
You probably still have these?
Oh yeah. And you know, again, if we get to talking about waking dreams, it is a Sasquatch experience that I had that was probably the most powerful thing of any phenomenon that I've had, with the most meaning for me. What was that? There were there's been other waking dreams, you know, in the past where you'll sense something and then, you know, that's what it is. So, you know, once again, I headed down a trail and didn't know where I was going with it. But
well, no, going back to
the UFO thing. So
yeah.
When I'm really young, 10, 11 years old, again, it's just a dream. I wake up in the middle of the night. I go over to a window and look out to the apple orchard, and there's a freaking UFO sitting there, just kind of a little single one, saucer shaped, got a dome on it. The lights were incredibly real to me, circling this thing and everything. And I started to get really worked up and everything. And then I just remember getting really, really, really sleepy. And then don't remember anything else, you know. But that, again, as far as life experiences, that sets itself apart from a regular dream for me. And then if you go to those kinds of things, subsequent to the slap on the side of the house, when I started to back away, here's the biggie. So 4:30 in the morning, I wasn't sleeping real well, and I finally fall asleep at 4:30. And I wake up in this reality, and I hear whoof, 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 whoof. Sounds like helicopter blades, kind of, but they don't sound like that. But in threes, 3 seems to be a big number. Woof, 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 woof. And then it just stops. And I am panicked, thinking something is going to fall out of the sky and onto the house, because in my mind, you know, well, that's keeping that thing aloft. It's some kind of helicopter thing. And so I go downstairs and out the back door, and I look up, and there's low clouds, misty, and I see through the clouds an X-shape, 2 lights, blue or green, I think green, and definitely red, that crossed each other in the sky. And I look up and see that. The next thing I notice is all the woods and brush around here are screaming with the sounds of tortured animals. Just awful. And as I'm looking, all of a sudden this bright white light is happening, and it takes me a minute or two to realize that that's coming out of my forehead. You know, it's wherever I look, this amazingly white light is shining. And then I look over to my right to a cedar tree, and I see a hand, and I'll say Sasquatch, but this was ugly. I mean, this was misshapen ugly. And so I look over, and this being comes out and starts walking towards me. And in my mind, in that moment, it was that this is your test. Are you going to be afraid and run? Are you going to stand your ground? What are you going to do? Are you ready? And so this comes towards me, walks past me, I stand my ground, and look down the drive, and here comes another being. Large, Sasquatchy, square jaw, looks like a sergeant in the army Sasquatch. Just something you trust, something you is strong and okay, and comes up. And all I know is we sat down and started to talk, and I don't remember anything else. And I always say it wasn't really the conversation, it was the tone of the conversation and the tone of that really impacted me. But it was like, here's your test, here's this scary thing, okay, you stood your ground, now we're gonna do this, you know. So am I freaking crazy? I don't know, you know, it's just a dream, is an amalgamation of everything I've gone through that just need to, express itself that way. But that light, that white light, was something I've never encountered before. And then talking to another person that's much into spiritualism and other things, well, that's a specific thing and with a third eye in some cultures, you know. I didn't know about it.
I felt like it was illuminating off of you?
It was like a freaking beacon coming out of my
like
head.
A lighthouse on your head?
Yeah, just like you're wearing a flashlight on your head, and it just, everywhere you look, it's that white. And again, the tortured animals, well, I've got a concern for nature, and, we are destroying and blah, blah, blah. So was that a manifestation of that, or was that something showing me that the earth is in distress, and this is what I get by with nature, is calling out, saying we're in trouble,
And you made note of what time it was when this happened?
Yeah, it was 4:30.
And then how real was this for you?
It was more real than anything is, especially like with the light and looking up into the sky and seeing those two things cross. And what was the meaning of that,
Where was this, the plus symbol?
It was over on the other side of the house, the other entry. But yeah, it was an X crossing at a fairly shallow angle. And again, the details of, but it wasn't just up in the sky. There was low, foggy clouds. So I saw that through the low, foggy.
Did you say it was a rigid object with lights in between
they
it?
passed.
They kind of intersected. Yeah, they moved.
Gotcha.
They crossed.
It wasn't an object.
No, it was two different things, So I go, well, what's that symbolism? There were two things crossing paths, So here I am crossing paths with whatever this is, And so subjectively, you start, your mind runs to go, well, what was the meaning of this? What am I supposed to take away from this? And, later, in dealing with a researcher on the property that was sure we were going to have some experiences, are you ready for this? And my only explanation is I was prepared. I know what I will do if freaking just anything, I'm pretty much going to sit down in a submissive posture and wait for that to let me know what it wants, So in my mind, it's like rehearsing for battle. I just replay that and go, it's going to be fine. On the other side of this, you're going to get some understanding,
Yeah.
And that just, that's just freaking stupid, But it's, again, you've got to shut off what your logical mind tells you and go, well, if we do have meanings, if we do have, dreams that mean something, whatever, what did this actually mean? But the sound of that whoof, 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 and stopping and going out and, just everything was so real and then so surreal at the same time.
The helo blade sound, what do you equate that to? Do you have any idea?
I have nothing, again, it was just amazingly clear and strong. And when it stopped, I just had the sense of, but then again, looking up to the sky, I see these two objects cross each other, in the form of an X. And you well know the form of an X is, expressed quite a bit out in stick structures and different things like that. So was that my brain turning it around and, making this little story for me to live, who knows, but we take things like that away and we go, what was the meaning of that? And at the end of the day, that other situations I've been in when I was really young that I told you about earlier, those are the more real things in life. And then you eventually learn to discount those things and you eventually learn that, no, that's not real, that this is the real world.
The realness of those beings that you saw, that you said maybe were Sasquatch, they were kind of gnarly looking.
Oh, the one, yeah.
The one compared to the other.
Hairy, scary face, yeah.
What was the difference between the one compared to the staff sergeant one with the chiseled jaw? What's the difference there?
Just the face seemed to be a bit distorted and contorted. The eyes were a bit buggy, I think, and just not a pleasant looking being. And again, the fear was all in my head, and well, we're not supposed to judge people by how they look, are we? And so if you get to that 80% human thing, so, was I judging, and
Well, did it display itself in a way that looked as though it was more foreboding? Was it?
It just walked towards me, and again, there was nothing scary about what it did. It's, and again, geez, there's people you meet that man, look at that guy, well, he's got the heart of a pussycat, and so
Right.
that was, in that moment, what happened for me was that I fear this, oh my God, I got to stand my ground.
Your whole walk is one of knowing yourself pretty good, knowing your true self, going with your instincts, and so I'm going to challenge you on a little bit of that, just based upon the way you've talked over the last year with me. Do you think that these initiations that you're talking about, like if you don't run, you stand your ground, and so they present you with something that seems a little more terrifying than this other one that you described as kind of just all business, but not necessarily that? Whatever became of that moment? So they approached you, you stood your ground, and then what?
The scary one just passed by and didn't pay attention because my attention was drawn to the one coming up the driveway that was much more friendly looking and much more almost, if you had an emergency, you'd go to that because that strong can help you,
Right.
and that's a comforting kind of thing, although it's massive and huge and, the whole thing. So it approaches, and I am feeling welcoming, and I'm feeling like this is okay. This is not going to be an issue. So was one a manifestation of my perception of that same thing, and then that was washed away, and I got to see the real essence of that, that it looked scary, that, and wasn't, So I don't know, and those things you can turn over in your head forever, and you might get information today or tomorrow that will enter your database and go, oh, now I think it meant that.
This is such a big moment here, and we're in a different part of the dance right now. And I wonder where the dance is going to lead later here, but so they get up close to you to the degree where one passes by you. How close is this one individual that looks foreboding as he's passing by you?
Oh, almost brushes right by.
Okay, and this is a hyper real moment that you don't pass off as a dream.
No, because of the sound, because of the light, because of all the context, it's a few times in life I've had these things,
Right.
and so that was one of those things. And again, my logical mind goes, well, don't run away with this, don't go into la la land, but this is an experience, this is something that no matter how much you try to quantify it and put it over here in a nice little container, maybe that's more real. And I told you about a near-death experience when I was very young at 4. That set up my whole life to, well, I know where I'm going, and I don't know about your stories, and I don't know that all of us don't go to maybe a lot of different places. Maybe we're a lot of different types of souls living here that, at the end of the day, we go back here, we go back there, wherever, So, yeah, I remember a lot of things when I was really young that I knew for sure, that I was taught not to know for sure as time goes on. I've been through channeling sessions with a good friend that revealed quite a bit to me about me. And again, take it with a grain of salt. But some of it is pretty compelling. During those same sessions, they named names of people that they wouldn't know.
Right, so you've seen evidence of hidden knowledge, and you've brushed up against it more than once. And I want to stick with these beings here because I want to go see the area that you're talking about here and talk to you about this other one, the one that you said looked like he was in the army there, and talk about what happened at that spot.
And that's it. It's there is no direct memory of anything other than sitting down next to him, and having a conversation, and I related this almost immediately to somebody else I was dealing with at the time that was a researcher, and I said it wasn't really about the conversation, it was about the tone of the conversation. And I take that for what you will, but we were sitting down together, exchanging ideas,
Okay.
and so that's, about all I can make out of that. And sometimes, you're not given the exacts, you need to funnel it through your processing.
But something happens to the witness too when they relive the area where they were. So let's go over there, and I'm going to take a pause here because of the battery on the camera, and we'll get resituated, and then let's take a look at your property as much as you want to show. And
well, yeah, and the thing is, it's been kind of put out there vibe-wise. Hey, Tobe's coming out, and maybe there will be something that we'll see that will be there, or maybe not. But I've been out recently in the last few days and found some things, so we can talk about that.
okay, perfect. Let's do it.
So we did do it. And the footage that I got was in the back of the property near Forrest's truck. And I felt like, well, the truck is way too close to where the camera is. The house is in the picture more. So I just decided to keep that footage for myself. However, the following footage that you're about to see is the footage that Forrest and I caught while we roamed the 60 plus acres. It felt like plus acres. And we found some interesting stuff, I think, especially just for an initial cursory walk. And so watch this in its entirety to the end, and enjoy getting a sneak peek at Forrest Walker's amazing property here.
Okay, so we're out here again with Forrest. Go ahead and take it from the top. Where'd you have your experience?
So my only possible sighting was across the hillside this way, not in this exact spot, but similar. And I kind of sat down to just absorb and listen. And the sun was coming in from that direction, so everything was very glistening, and the ferns were really glistening. And the tree, that specific tree, I think had the moss on it like that.
Okay.
So it was just glowing. And then I looked, and there was a shape on the side of one of the trees. And of course, I told myself, well, that's just another tree or a stump, and you'll go look at it in a minute here, but just burn it into your brain. And so I stared at it and thought about it and stared at it, and then looked around a minute later, and it was gone. So something was there, and it was as shiny and glistening in the reflected sunlight that was kind of backlit of anything that was there, but it just kind of merged in, but it just looked out of place.
Yeah.
And then it was gone.
And this is we were talking how old this forest is since it's last been logged. You're saying back in the 20s, you think? 30s?
These were probably 1890s.
Yeah. So as far as contact, it's just you and another neighbor up on this ridge, so it doesn't get a lot of, overuse. Okay, so there's all sorts of great little tracks here, and you're not short at all on deer, and so you just got trails.
Well, and I tagged it, but when I was first dealing with people, and that was the time I was dealing with David Ellis, I was seeing, I think, Utah Sasquatch. You know who that is? He went off.
Is it Nathan Rio?
Nathan Rio?
Yeah.
Got a lot of good info from him about stick structures and stuff.
Yeah.
But up here, I swear there was a constructed fence to kind of herd, or which actually he would talk about, I forget the military term, but the top of a ridge being one of the most strategic places you can be. And so at the top of the ridge just below it, there were trees that did not originate where they were stacked and everything, that pretty much made it really difficult to just proceed right up into this one area that was thick with cedar and had a lot of space underneath, what I call rooms and stuff. So I did encounter, what he had called fencing.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, you look at it and you go, okay, there's got to be a rational explanation that, those trees, some of them did not come from that area.
Okay, Forrest, what were you pointing out here?
Well, just up here in the middle of nowhere, there's a pretty good sized egg. Your hand will show the size of it. That appears to be like a chicken.
Yeah. Now, would you recognize another bird's kind of egg? Could that be from an osprey? Could that be from a...
Yeah, who knows?
Been here a while. You can see there's little moss patina inside of it.
Yeah, I would think I don't know how big an eagle egg or an ostrich
Yeah.
egg is or whatever.
Would that be eagle habitat at all? Do they roost?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It could be. An owl. There's a lot of owls,
Yeah.
so who knows about that. So,
Never
yeah,
thought
jumping to
about that could be an
conclusions.
owl egg. It could have been taken from somebody's back porch too, right?
Well, and that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
What critter like a coyote or a raccoon can carry an egg up whole
Oh yeah.
and not just eat it, because survival is you got to eat that thing, get the protein in you, and move on. So, what hauls an egg up here? So the odds are it's got to be something native to the area, but I'm not aware of anything that.
So Forrest just found another egg remnant here. We're how many yards away? I mean, we're quarter mile away from where the last one was, and that's a very large egg.
That's like a goose.
Have you heard goose around here?
One of the farms down here has goose and has had turkeys, and they get disappeared all the time, but there's wildlife up there. But the question is, what carries an egg
Right.
up to an area like this?
We're next to a really cool stump here with some new growth on the old growth. Life will find a way. So I'm up here with Forrest again. This is going to be kind of hard to see just based upon how much foliage is here, but you were saying that you had a dream about a pile of rocks, and it was on this certain type of, this all looked familiar to you as far as your dream was concerned, correct?
Yeah, it's not exactly literal, but when I came upon this, it just clicked, and in my head I said, this is the place you dreamed about.
Right.
With the rock on the edge of the big drop-off, and you can eventually flip around and see that we're on the edge.
On the edge of a mountain.
A pretty good sized drop-off.
And so we were noting how the bigger part is up here, which, let's say this is a grave of some kind. You'd want to have some kind of headstone here. But the thing is, rocks like this around here, we've seen a few, but they're either really large or super small. And these are all, 12-inch size granite type rocks. And
smaller.
And the head, if we're calling that the headpiece there, is exactly due east for what you would want to see if you were facing off this direction here specifically, which would be a traditional burial, is to face the way that the resurrection will happen, or most graves are facing directly this way. But we haven't seen, what's so impressive to me is just the fact that these were all hauled in from someplace, and there's quite a few
Gathered and smaller. That's not so big.
No. And the fact that you would have a dream about this is really interesting. Out of all the places we've been here, this is the one that says, oh, this is where Forrest needs to hang out. Maybe, who knows? Who knows what would happen? The sun's definitely going down. We're headed back to the property, and we're going to kick back on the patio and see what becomes of it.
All right, that was my walk with Forrest Walker. The sun went down, and the flashlights came out, and then the rain started. What was going to be a colored night vision, night from the balcony, turned into a rain out. We visited for a little bit longer, but for the most part, it was it just wasn't to be had. So I don't know what's going to become of going back there and filming. You want to be careful about how much time you take out of people's lives. So if I'm ever invited back out, and we can do some more interesting stuff and bring it to you, we will. But I just want to err on the side of privacy for Forrest's sake. So that was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was fun for you to look and listen at. Again, it's over at the YouTube channel. If you're listening, go over there and hit the alert key, because there's stuff coming up. As I said, we have the strange stroll from Maury Island, the Maury Island Slag Forest. So I go to this forest and find some interesting stuff. There's some interesting layers to the Maury Island incident, and the official story has yet to be really told as far as I'm concerned. So that'll be coming out next week. And also the next Strange Stroll poll will be up immediately after that comes out on YouTube. It won't be a podcast, mind you. This is a video, so that's definitely over at YouTube. Hey, if you want to support the show, you can do that. I would encourage you to go to strangebrowradio.com and get some merch. Hoodies, man, I've got like 5 different hoodies in my wardrobe right now. And hoodies are always good to go as far as I'm concerned. You can wear them with anything, especially out here when it's typically 47 degrees all year long. So there's great Strange Brow Radio hoodies over there. They're super cozy. Definitely, guys, get the 2XLs because even ladies, hoodies seem to stretch. There's t-shirts, socks, stickers, mugs, all those good things. I want to thank everybody over at patreon.com/Strange Brow Radio. I have some people that I want to thank who have specifically stayed with us here. Shannon, thank you very much. Shannon Hankey, Kevin, ZC, that's what they're going by. MJ, thank you very much. Benjamin, thank you for your contribution. Nikki, Dave Donovan, Neil Morris, Jill. Hey, Jill. Jill is part of the production coming out soon. Flash of Beauty, Jill Remensnyder, also a Strange Brow patron. Jason Klein over there at General URKO. Miranda Gerke, one of the holdouts from the Cottage Grove Axe and Fiddle days. Thank you so much, Miranda. Patrick Ross, Edward Clark, Christina B., Scott Taylor. Thank you, Scott. A BFRO engineer, recently retired. Enjoy your retirement there, Scott. Christina Carter Nash, she has one of our hoodies. Brenda Kinzer, interesting stuff. Done a interview with Brenda as well. Keenan Geiger, Steve Kolb, great guy. I've talked to him a few times. David, always with us, David Mabane. Thank you very much. Sean Perkins, Alex Whitcomb over at Drifted Creations, and many, many more hope to come. Thank you guys so much for contributing each and every month to the show. And they are getting the extended color night vision from the upcoming Strange Stroll that we did here over at Maury Island. So if you want to take a look at that, get ready, coming next week. All right, that's it for me. If you want to be a guest on the show, you know how to get a hold of me at strangebrowradio@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. I would love to talk to you. I think we're going to go into the world of dogmen for some of the patrons and start really looking into this a little bit more seriously. I've been avoiding it, but I don't think I should anymore. So that's coming up. All right, you know what to say. I will see you in the trees.